I do know that in the original design for the senior center, we wanted high spaces for the banquet hall in particular. How we will address that, we can introduce fans, etc., into the high ceiling, and that we can bring some of that captured heat that's up high back down. Also depends upon how we're able to introduce heat and air conditioning into the building, and if we're able to accomplish that perhaps on a lower elevation, if you will, as opposed to up high, we're trying to force that air down. We might be able to address some of those concerns that way as well. Pardon? And well, of course, we're insulating the roof, yes. Sir?
Yes, any thoughts given to operational expenses and if an alternative energy source? You have a lot of south-facing roof surface?
Actually, we don't take questions from the audience.
I'm sorry.
We're taking from the county board.
Sorry.
Can you answer his question, please?
That works really well. Are you in cahoots? No. I think this project, like all of our work, we want to be energy environmentally sensitive. Right now where we're at is this simply a feasibility study, and quite honestly, some of those things that may come up in questions such as yours is still work to be done. From a sustainability point of view, and I think many of you are familiar with the LEED certifications that exist within our industry. Whether we actually apply for LEED or whether we simply use it as a guideline, we are well on our way to being sustainable because we're reusing an existing building. A building that would otherwise be torn down and put in a landfill, and we're eliminating that completely. And so I think I've stated this at least at one of the property committee meetings that, one of the, if I phrase it as a selling point about this project to the community, is the fact that it's sustainable and that you're reusing and repurposing a building that has been with us for 80 years, and there's no reason to think that it can't continue living out a new life and a new successful life for another 80 years. And so I think that's something that's important to think about. But I think as we continue to work on the project, our choice of materials, how we do the project, etc., if we can keep that sustainability in our minds, I think that becomes really important.
Anybody else got any questions? This is the time to ask them, because our next situation will be the resolutions to vote it up or vote it down, I guess, is blunt. Go ahead, Steve.
I'm just going to make a comment. I had a few retired paramedic, retired from the county paramedics come to me, and a little concerned about the location as far as the ambulances getting out to the highway and stuff like that. And I'm sure it's been talked about, but I said I would bring it up. And, I don't know what those were discussions that you had, but, and I don't know if there's any solutions to that, or if there's any long-term solutions to making sure that they can, get out to the highway quickly, because obviously they're going to be dealing with stoplights and things like that.
We got Dan Williams back there. You can't see him, but he's behind that post. Come on forward and explain, Dan. And we'll have Joe Presbeck after Dan. Just at one of the meetings I was at, the question was asked both Dan and Joe what their opinions was on this project, and both of them were very positive. So.
Yes, we did have some of those same concerns, and it does put us slightly a little further north than we are now, so response time is a concern. We were concerned about the intersection of Egg Harbor Road and 14th. We can control those intersection lights remotely so that we can make it green for us every time we enter that intersection. So that will alleviate a lot of things in that area. We believe that by going up behind the Nightingale Alabama Street and blending into the new intersection there, and not necessarily going through the roundabout, especially if we're going south, will be an advantage, because that'll be a nice closed intersection in the future. So we looked at all of those things, and again, I stated publicly, and I'll state it again, I think the better place for us was up at the other site. However, I understand that there's many, many more advantages for us to be part of this project and to support this project. The few minor things that we looked at as being obstacles, I think we've dealt with and can move forward with without any concerns.
Thanks, Dan. I
Any
just wanted to get it out because I was asked.
That's fine. Anybody else got any questions? Joe, you wanna put your spin on it and see if they got any questions to you? Spin the right word?
I'm not sure I have a spin for it. I think this building meets the needs just as the last project that we took a look at does. I think this has more character and certainly presents some interesting options that the other one maybe didn't have. And as we work with Venture to take a look at it, we can repurpose the areas and pretty much hit what we had put in the original building. We were minus one activity room, which we compensated for with what Stephen talked about inside what would be the dining area. So I think it's another good alternative for us, and I think the exterior has got some potential to be pretty cool.
Thank you. Anybody? Go ahead, John.
This is for John or Steve. In your concept drawing that you have here, are there any costs? Is all that blacktop surface all new? Is it all getting utilized?
None of it's new.
No?
Yeah.
So that's existing?
That's existing.
Okay, so that's not part of that cost. Secondly, I was asked down south on the mitigation of bad soils, I guess we call it. I understand you have in your budget 2 feet of removal of soil. What if those test borings come back and say there's more? Is there an estimated cost?
We have estimated costs for both the inside of the building as well as costs for the areas on this particular aerial where you see the green, that would be pavement right now. And so we budgeted money to take 2 feet of soil out of all of those areas as well. I just can't imagine that we're gonna find the need to replace 2 feet of soil on that entire site outside. That was $400,000, but that's money that's in the budget.
There was a question of
Yes.
proposed 2 feet by constituents. If it goes below the 2 feet, we don't have an idea.
I mean, there's a removal cost, yes. I can't tell you offhand, I don't recall what the number was on a cubic foot basis, what that removal would be.
So if you're removing 2 feet, what would that cost? Was that
The
400,000?
400,000. What we discussed when we put that number together, because Immel had given us a number, it was like $1 million for the entire site. And we said, wait a second, we're not removing all this pavement, we're gonna leave it there. We said that on a go-forward basis, if we found that we were encountering problems with this point that you just mentioned, we would reduce the amount of grass area that we have. And the places that we would first take would be that area that's just off the highway to the west of that portion of the long north-south portion where the activity rooms are. If you can see between the building and the pavement and the road, there's a whole section there that could still be paved. We just wouldn't remove as much of the pavement to address that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Richard Haynes?
The pavement will have to be replaced at some time, correct? You know,
In the life of the pavement,
you're gonna have a brand new building like that, or what we call a brand new building, you can't have a little cracked up blacktop. So that's gonna have to be redone.
there could be that time, that's correct, yes.
Okay, so what happens at that time? When you move everything around in the soil, you know?
Our understanding with the DNR is that you remove the pavement and you replace the pavement, you're fine, so long as you maintain the cap. So you're not gonna be removing soil under pavement that's just simply being repaired or replaced.
But you're gonna be moving gas pumps or gas things. Those are all things I suppose that you figure out along the way, but there's so many ifs with this that, you know, I really love the concept of it and the way it is. I'm kind of like Dan Williams a little bit. I think it would be a nice spot over the corner for their building, but, you know, like my heart says, you know, it'd be great to do it, but my brain says, you know, there's too many ifs. I mean, there's no guarantees that this is gonna work when we're done. Right?
Like any project,
I know,
we
yeah.
carry contingency
Yeah.
dollars.
Yeah, you take an 85-year-old person, how many doctors is it gonna take to put them back in shape, you know? Yeah. And I know anything can be done and all that kind of stuff, but anyway, I just was curious about that blacktop. Should be probably replaced at the same time you do the building, so it looks nice.
Yes.
When you're talking about relocating the gas pumps, that was done, and I don't remember when. Was that put in 25 years ago? Grant, do you remember?
The highway committee looked at that very thoroughly, and they can remember the date, some go back to 1990, there's been some additions on that after it. So they're approaching their life.
Which is 25.
John or Biz, or, I mean, not Biz, John and, Joel, maybe you can respond to that?
Getting it right now.
Okay.
Well, I know
The highway committee looked at it very thoroughly, and they did take a vote to recommend that they still keep a fuel station on the east side. Move it north. And at one time, there was a question, if you remember, John, about the road being too close to the, new ambulance garage, and that's a, gotta remember, these are conceptual plans, and that's a very, very easy solution, just move the road further into that grove of trees that are sitting there, bring the road down around, so the trucks aren't. But Joel, you got her?
Dan's coming here.
But I remember when I was at the city and they did that, the fuel station now, that was all tested because the old one was taken out.
Exactly.
So that part, I would think there shouldn't be any problem unless we really got certain of the tanks that we put in. But, so that's been more recent, that's not an old pump or tanks. Because I think at the time, the city had theirs and the county had theirs, and so they both were taken out and just the county